I keep thinking about how lucky we are to have this opportunity.
It
to
is
have
pretty
two
interesting.
Supras from Toyota, the new 6-cylinder and the brand new 4-cylinder, but we have them at the same time, back to back, same road, where we can do something, honestly, that most people watching will never get the chance to do.
You're absolutely right. And thanks to Toyota for sending both of these cars together. So what we've decided to do is find our stretch of road that's got twisties, it's got straightaways.
Yep.
And both Todd and I started out in a Supra. And we drove the entire stretch down and back, and then we swapped cars. We're jumping into the car right after the other one and immediately feeling the same corners that we just drove. Very intriguing.
These are so close that I really think, and there's differences for sure between the 6 and the 4-cylinder.
Yeah.
But they are so close, I really think unless you have this back-to-back opportunity, you're really hard-pressed to tell the differences that we're going to discuss. The other difference going on, though, let's talk about this. The 6-cylinder has got more power for its second year in production. The 2020 had a measly 330 horsepower,
Right.
which, by the way, every time anybody dynoed that car was way above 335. And BMW was saying the same car was 385. For the second year, we have more power, 382 horsepower, and it's like 3 more pound-feet of torque. It's 368 pound-feet of torque.
Yeah.
But the point is, over 350 on both numbers now, according to the factory. But if you consider the fact that these seem to be under-listed, this is a wildly powerful car.
And Toyota did not just update the published numbers to now match what we think was the actual number,
which I really thought they did,
based on the last published number without doing any mechanical changes, because they indeed did mechanical changes to the engine. There's upgrades and refinements, and they've indicated to us, without giving anything away, they will continue to improve things and bring new things out, and there will be more GR goodness in the future.
Maybe a manual? They haven't said this, but
we
maybe a
we
manual's
cannot
coming.
confirm or deny.
We'll see.
But they have just indicated things continue to progress, and that is proven in this 3-liter Supra.
Yeah, there's the exhaust manifold is different, the pistons are different, and it's lower compression.
Yes.
But you wind up with 47 more horsepower, again, like 3 pound-feet of torque. You're not going to know. But
there's people dynoing, and then there's the numbers on the sheet.
Yes, exactly true. I'm expecting the people dynoing will still be above the figure that they claim.
Probably.
This has always been a much faster car than people realize.
Is Toyota sandbagging on this new number as well? Are we sandbagging at a new level?
This is the side note of the BMW partnership, because BMW has been known for the last probably decade of their number is never as high as the car feels or seems to be dynoed by others.
Right.
And I think that is carrying over here to this Toyota product. Not that obviously we end up with more power. What are we going to do? Complain? No. This was already nearly a 4-second 0 to 60 car. They've now broken the 4-second barrier. This is so much faster than people realize it is. And I think it's faster than the numbers too.
Yeah, it feels more powerful. Again, let's take all the numbers out of it. Let's take the people dynoing and what's on the Toyota sheet. It just feels faster.
Do you think it feels more than the 2020?
I do.
Really?
Not initially at takeoff, but if you keep your foot in it and above 5 and you think, well, that's some newfound power and it's pushing you into the seat harder, and you're going, it's like the difference between a Cessna and a Learjet. I suppose
that's not nearly that profound.
I suppose that's the difference between the 2-liter and the 3-liter, but still.
That's better, yes.
The world comes at you faster. And I feel like, okay, where's the power? Oh, that's new. I don't remember. I didn't remember that quite as well. But again, that's why we have the 3-liter with the 2-liter to do this comparison back to back. But I do feel like I'm feeling more power at the high end, at the very high end.
I don't know that there's really that much of a change from the 2020 in power delivery. But, I mean, I know it's supposed to exist, but I think the car's been wickedly fast in both versions. But anyway.
I mean, you've got to really, stomp it and get into it.
Yeah.
And once you do, then okay, there's more power like that.
All right. So really quickly, interior changes, there aren't any. Unless you get the new A91 edition thing. It's got little accents.
Which is great.
Which is a new really cool blue color. Those are new things in the A91 edition. But it essentially is the same car that it was last year interior-wise.
Yes.
They haven't changed that. It's the
But
same
that's okay.
styling. No,
that's okay.
Nor did we expect them to.
Many cars don't change
No.
from 12 years. They're the 40th anniversary car and the 50th anniversary car.
370Z, anybody? Yeah.
I don't know who we're talking about
Yeah.
really, but yes, no interior changes, which is just fine. Although the smaller screen that was on the lower supermodel from 2020, that is nixed. That has gone away. Everybody gets the larger screen across all cars, so that's great. It's still not huge. It's not, overtaking everything in the interior, which is nice.
The other thing that they did in changes to this, and I was surprised by this when Toyota told us, they are looking at this 3-liter as the track car variant. If you're not a person that really is going to track your car, they think you need the 2-liter, okay?
Yes.
So they're looking at this 3-liter as the track car variant. As a result, they put some new aluminum strut tower braces in the front as well as doing changes to the engine. They are still pursuing that 50-50 weight balance in this car and in the 4-cylinder.
Yeah, that's across all Supras.
Totally.
That is the thinking,
when they're taking out parts, which we'll talk about in the 4-cylinder, they're still trying to keep that 50-50 weight distribution, which is very interesting. This car is like 3 pounds heavier than it was before, but it is a 3,400-pound car. Now, you have plenty of grunt to motivate it. It's not like, it's dragging. It's got tons of power.
Yeah.
The thing I'm very struck by in this engine, and mainly feel it versus the 4-cylinder, is the immediacy.
Okay.
While this is a straight 6 from BMW, and yes, it's turbocharged, and obviously everybody tunes their turbos a little bit differently, there is zero waiting for impressive power in this car. There's no gathering itself up. There's nothing about give me a moment while I find you your power, sir. It's just here to a huge degree all of the time.
See, it's funny. When I had my 928, that was 3,500 pounds. And I thought, well, this is kind of a light GT car, 3,500 pounds. So 3,400 doesn't sound out of the ballpark to me. It doesn't sound like, wow, 38, 4,000 pounds. What a pig, Okay, it's got a lot of power. It doesn't sound that way to me, and it drives stoutly. Todd and I are coming from lightweight cars. Yes, I do feel more robustness, stoutness. You can feel a little bit more weight, but then it's immediately overcome by everything else that Toyota has done. And by the way, Toyota is solely responsible for all of the chassis tuning for all Supras. Just nobody else. It's Toyota only.
3,400 pounds is a lot of weight, but at the same time, in modern sports cars, that's pretty average. So we're in a very competitive place that is very average and comparable to pretty much anybody else making a sports car right now of this $50,000 or so level. Those kind of cars.
This is the first time I've ridden in the passenger seat. This is great. This is very exciting.
This has a heads-up display that isn't in the 4-cylinder, which tells me just how much I am speeding. So that's going on as well.
Notice so much more when you're not having to drive. You just notice so much more of the dynamics.
It is the immediacy of the power here that is the main difference between this and the 4-cylinder. And I feel like this felt wickedly powerful in the 2020. I don't feel like there's that much difference. But
again, I feel like it's at the really high end.
Okay, which is where that horsepower would reveal itself. Because there is no change in torque. I'm excited about the 4-cylinder to discuss the two, because it is interesting how this does feel. Your word was robust. This does feel heavier, bigger, more robust, but not in a bad way. Not in a bad way.
But I guess stout, robust.
Yes, agreed.
Because it's still on its toes. It still turns in immediately. It's still just crisp and delightful. So the weight is relative to what the performance is giving you. I feel like.
And very, like I say, very
equivalent. With the stiffening and with the suspension.
Very equivalent to modern sports cars. Modern sports cars are all kind of in this weight area. As much as I wish they were lighter, they really are. Now, this is the same steering rack. It is the same gearbox. When you go to the 4-cylinder, or if you look at last year's 6-cylinder, all of those parts are the same. What's happening here, and this engine's been tweaked. I mean, granted, more than tweaked with what they've done, but this engine's been tweaked. But everything else is about the same. They did change programming on the electric power steering, also on the electric differential, because this is an e-diff, whereas the 2-liter has a classic mechanical diff. Now, I understand that e-diff can throw power around. I get that. It introduces that unknown variable of, did the system calculate properly? And there were discussions in the 2020 versions about sometimes the e-diff not operating exactly the same. Now, we're not on a track.
You mean based on your corner and your speed and
because
that kind of thing?
because let's be honest, the brain is deciding what the differential should do.
Sure,
and so that introduces an unknown variable of what should this do. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the mechanical diff is going to be the same every single time you do the corner. In the 2020, there were some question marks. Sometimes that didn't always operate the same. We're not on a track. I can't verify that. I don't know. But this also has the adaptive dampers and these kind of things that make it a more versatile car. I'm surprised with those adaptive dampers. This isn't supposed to be the Grand Touring car because it can be changed up so much.
Well, it can be, but again, this is the track-focused, harder-edged, and what we're doing is comparing sensory inputs because the wheelbase is the same, the chassis is the same. It's different parts, but as Todd said, the different tuning on the parts. So the algorithms have changed on the steering. It's the same ratio between the two cars, but a little bit has been changed, as you talked about, on the e-diff, on the steering rack. So little changes to address those small issues. So that's what I mean when car manufacturers are consistently working and upgrading. The parts might be the same, but they're working a little bit differently. They're working more in concert based on just usage, based on customer feedback. They're consistently updating that.
They have flat out told us on the Supra they're going to do something a little bit different and special every single calendar year to just kind of keep this interesting. Now, my question is, what does that do to the person that bought one last year? But the thing I'm excited about when that's said, and I'm going to say it again, when you say something like that, I go, I think there's a manual coming, but we'll see. We don't know. Right now, it's still the ZF 8-speed, and it's the same transmission in both cars.
All right, so now for the 2-liter. You've heard about this, the changes, the subtleties of the 3-liter. We need to drive the 2-liter.
The 2021 Supra, now with less.
Well, you know, less weight. We like that.
Yes. Okay, well, let's start right there.
Okay.
The 2-liter is 220 pounds lighter than the 3-liter.
Awesome.
Now that doesn't come, I want to put this out there, that does not come from the engine change. The engine change is in there, but the big thing about the 4-cylinder is that they've taken stuff out and they've tried to maintain 50-50 weight distribution, which means it's not 200 came out of the nose.
The preconceived notion is that they took this 6-cylinder out and put the 4-cylinder just about right in somewhere in the engine bay.
It's good.
Just mounted it in there and we're good. That's not what they did. The 2-liter has now effectively created a genuine front mid-engine car.
Isn't that interesting?
Because the 2-liter is now entirely behind the front axle. There's a huge air gap between the front of the engine and the back of the radiator. You can see it. You can look down through and see the electric power steering rack. So this is a different dynamic car in terms of being front mid-engine. It's not just a front engine car. But keep in mind, as Todd has said, the goal of every Supra is an even weight balance front to rear, a 50-50 weight balance. So to achieve that, by taking weight out of the nose and shoving the engine back, well, they had to balance it in the rear too, which means the 2-liter doesn't get the active differential. It gets an LSD, a straight up LSD. As many sports cars aspire to an LSD. I can't wait to upgrade.
I would take the mechanical limit slip diff. I'd rather just have that because it's going to be consistent.
It's going to just be
because I like the old school mechanical stuff apparently anyway. So I just want the old school mechanical thing. It also does not have the adaptive dampers.
It does not.
So this has and this is a reality in the 86 and many of the sports cars. It has what I would call the compromise suspension setting. You set it up to be good for corners and good for road tripping. Now the thing I'm surprised by is Toyota is saying this is the Grand Tourer. In my mind, you want the adaptive suspension to be the Grand Tourer, or you want a softer setup than this has. This has a fairly stiff setup for something that's trying to be a Grand Tourer. And it only has one setting because it's not adaptive. The dampers are not adaptive here. The other thing they've removed is we went from 19s to 18-inch wheels.
So staying on the suspension for a moment, I feel like the rotational ability of the 2-liter is better than the 3-liter. Driving them back to the back, as we've done on the same corners immediately, I feel like the rotation is better, even though the weight distribution is the same. It's lighter, but equal front to back. Now, you said consistent about the suspension. Yes, consistency is good, but the track-focused 3.0 has that adaptive suspension, and it's specifically designed for the corner-to-corner transitions on a track. And just doing the curves that we did, I can go faster in the 3-liter because it modulated, all right, this corner's different, this corner's different,
okay.
and it was that transition from side to side that I instantly felt it. I thought, aha, this just kind of jumped over the same bump, whereas that absorbed it, and I thought, I can roll on harder onto the throttle.
I hear
that
you.
was the difference, but this turns in quicker because the weight is different. It's less, but it's different in the car.
I hear you
That's
on
what
both
I'm
of
feeling.
those. I hear you on both of those. I think the adaptive suspension is better in sport mode, where I can see it working on a track, but the thing I miss is the soft setting. When you take it out of sport, that's what this should have for Grand Touring.
Okay.
So that's why I feel like this almost would benefit from either a softer suspension in general, because it is pretty stiff for Grand Touring, or an adaptive suspension so you could really turn it into a Grand Tourer.
So what if this had the adaptive suspension, but would that cost it more in terms of weight? Is this a lighter suspension setup? Nobody's weighing the components,
But
by
here's
the way.
the thing, though. If you're talking about a weight difference, 200 pounds is me. We're not talking about a massive weight difference here. And you would think,
which is surprising,
going from the 6-cylinder to the 4-cylinder, you would think, I think initially you would think, well, that's all engine. No, it's not. That means it's probably about half engine. So the rest of those parts are adding up to be the rest of that 200 pounds. So if you put the adaptive suspension back in, what's your penalty? 50? Honestly, it can't be that much.
Yeah. Now, we don't like to get too stats heavy. It is important because it does reveal, and we go chasing the feeling about what the stats say.
Totally.
In this case, I'll give you an example. Both engines use the same amount of oil, 6.5 liters. I thought,
interesting, yeah. And they're both BMW engines, too.
Yeah.
Well, but think about it for a second. We've got no e-diff, there's weight. No adaptive suspension, there's weight.
Yeah.
The one that they're talking about for that 220 pounds weight difference is the one with 4 speakers. This has 12 again, and it also has no power seats. These are heavy components. That 200 pounds is getting spread through a lot of things, and it's
a body.
Far more than just engine. So it's not a huge weight difference. So I think adaptive suspension back would be a nice add.
That would make it more the GT car, but then on a track, that's where that AVS really shines, though.
The suspension tuning isn't as high end because obviously the adaptive dampers can do a lot more. There's no question there, for sure. Styling-wise, changes here are very minimal. You can see it in the tailpipes, you can see it in the mirrors, and you can see it in the 18-inch wheels, which I'm going to go on record and say I've never liked the 19s on this car.
Really?
I really like the 18s.
You mean just the style or just the size?
Just the style. This has got the Michelin Super Sports on it either way. They're great tires. By the way, they're the same width on the 18s or the 19s. They're 255 up front, 275 in the rear. That is a huge, meaty, sticky tire.
And you're just feeling so much squish in the sidewall between the 18s and 19s.
No.
It's a huge
No,
not
you're
really.
not. No, I'm talking sheer style. From the moment they introduced it in 2020, I never liked the look of the 19s. I thought the car deserved a better looking wheel. I prefer the 18s on this car. They look better.
Yeah.
I think it sets the car off more. Plus, the yellow color, I will admit it, I own a yellow Lotus Elise. That is almost exactly the color of this car. Having said that, most cars don't look good in yellow.
Couldn't agree more.
This car looks phenomenal in yellow, and I think Toyota knows it because it's the only paint color with an upcharge.
Yeah, you have to pay $425 more to get nitro yellow.
And you want it.
I agree.
Oh.
I've never thought cars look good in yellow. Maybe with the exceptions of a few Ferraris and a certain Elise that we know about.
Fair.
But I see yellow on this. This is the spec to have.
It's amazing. It looks really,
I
really
will
good
pay.
on this car.
How much does it cost? I want that. Yes, please. I want to talk about the wheels and back up a little bit to components because we talk about the best upgrade that you can do is tires on your car.
Yes.
The first and best upgrade, short of a driver upgrade.
That is the first and best upgrade, but
That's
tires are the
really
thing
what you
nobody
should
does
do.
and should.
Get to be a better driver. But tires are the key. Now, in general, a cheaper component is not optimized really to be the lightest weight thing ever. And I'll give you an example, and that is the wheels. The 18s are cast wheels, whereas the 19s are forged wheels. I haven't weighed them, but I'm wondering, just in terms of unsprung weight, what that does to the feel. Are they a little bit heavier, even though the weight, the distribution is different?
I'd be curious about the corner weight, too.
It still turns in really crisply. So is that the reason that not as much weight came out of the car as you thought.
I asked that question.
I'm asking.
And honestly, I asked Toyota, I want to know the weights of the wheels. They thought
Could you weigh the wheel on
They
your
thought I
bathroom
was a
scale,
little bit
please?
insane, but I want to know the difference in corner weight. So there
Yeah.
may not be any, which is true.
Right.
But let's talk power real quick, because here I am thundering back up this hill in this significantly down on power. It's 255 horsepower, 268 torque. So it's down.
It's just about 70 in torque. This is only about 70 less torques.
Yes, no question, nobody's surprised. The 3-liter 6-cylinder is more powerful.
Yes.
I think where you feel it is the immediacy of it. This 4-cylinder takes just a second to gather itself. And depending upon
Before pinning you?
Yes, but depending upon how high you are in the rev band and how much throttle you were giving it before you floorboarded it, that all relates to how much time it takes, and I'm talking about a small amount of time, but how much time it takes to gather itself up and be like, oh, you want to go fast. Having said that, I don't think most people need more than this car gives. This is faster, more powerful in feel than most people will ever need or use. Yes, there is more power available, and yes, we as car enthusiasts, we're kind of bred to believe, well, the bigger number must be better. I think for more people, this is the better car. You will only occasionally find a situation, and I think it's when you're mid RPM and you floorboard it, where you go, like a little more, but most of the time, it's plenty fast. So now think about what the 6-cylinder feels like in comparison, where it just doesn't wait at all. This waits a tiny beat and then gathers itself up and goes. And I also do think this dives in better. It's the exact same steering ratio, but in spite of the small change in weight, because of that engine placement, because of that engine placement, this ducks in a tiny bit better, and you don't feel weight as much in the corners as you do in the other Supra. Now, I say that, and then say this. If you didn't drive them back to back, I don't think you'd know.
I agree. We're really slicing it thinly. We're just, what's the slight difference?
Totally.
Because, it is a body. It's a 200-pound person, and that's all you're feeling. And wow, that torque. 70, just about 70 in difference of available torque. That's not that much, really. And I was talking about the power. It's almost 130 more horsepower, but that's where you feel at the top end. Mm-hmm. And it does give you that immediacy.
Yeah. I think that's the only...
I have to agree with you. This is the spec. It doesn't sound like it's the one you want.
Yeah.
But it is. We are feeling a little bit lighter, and that immediacy, that turn-in, even though the other one with the AVS, the suspension, it counters everything. It counters its weight and still does really well. It's got the 19s.
Yeah.
The good news is, both of these Supras are incredible. Mm-hmm. This is the spec. If you want to save just a little bit of money, can you track it? Yes. If you really want to track it, get the 3-liter. But don't use all these specs to bludgeon your friends with because they don't know the slight differences.
Yeah.
Ultimately, cosmetically, there's not that much. And I kind of like that Toyota's sort of like, well, I'm not telling you. You're going to have to look at the brakes to see if they're single piston or the 4-piston Brembos.
Because this does have smaller brakes.
So that's little giveaways.
This is the decontented Supra. What this makes me want to do is makes me want to go parts bin with the Supra. It makes me want to go, okay, I want to make the ultimate Supra.
They did it for you.
But here's the thing. I want the adaptive dampers and the bigger brakes off of there, but I want it in the 4-cylinder because I actually like the rotation a little better. I would like a manual. They may have this list at Toyota already, and they're already building it. That's very possible.
So he's asking for what Porsche already does. They have the slight, they've got the S, now the GTS, and the GT4.
Yes.
And the Targa, and the GT, So if you want the ultimate, maybe Toyota can start doing that. Toyota, maybe you could start, between these two cars, it's sort of like the lighter weight. It's the T, the Super T.
You know what's ridiculous is
that's interesting.
In the history of this show, I've never wanted a car scale until we had these two cars. Because the fact that they did that 220-pound weight difference, but then that was for the 4-speaker version. This now has the 12. All this kind of little things like the wheels.
Speakers.
I would just be curious, take wheels off, weigh that. I would get nuts on these two cars because honestly, unless you're sitting back to back, I don't know that you're going to be able to sense all the things we're talking about.
Yeah.
Can I go controversial for a second?
Oh, okay.
Have you heard about the buffeting?
I have heard the buffeting, and I have experienced the buffeting.
There is a whole subculture going on about Supras and terrible buffetings. I have never had a sports car not convertible, a sports car with a hatch that did not have buffeting issues. Now, I agree there are different degrees of it. This car has buffeting. My Lotus has buffeting that will scare you out of the car.
You want buffeting?
Okay?
You haven't seen buffeting.
I had a 300ZX that had terrible buffeting.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of sports cars. Buffeting is an issue because you roll down these windows and that mirror that is regulated to be a certain size is throwing all kinds of weird air into the cabin.
Throwing the vortex and...
I'll just stay Toyota for a second. We just had the 86. The buffeting in here is worse than the 86. It is bad. This is sports cars. I don't think that is any issue for not buying this car.
That wouldn't keep me from buying a Supra. I don't really drive around with my windows down, and the faster I go, I want my windows up. Especially on track days. We ask all the time, can we keep our windows up? Because it's actually nicer to be in here.
Yes, it is.
You can in Europe. They just keep their windows up on every track. That would not, I don't care about the buffet. That is not the deciding factor, the determining thing.
But I will say this, while we're here, two problems. If you're concerned about wind buffeting or where your arm sits on this, I don't think you like this car because your arm is a little high and there is buffeting.
Don't care.
Neither of these matter to me. And then I will also say a last controversial thing before we go.
Okay.
This car doesn't have great visibility. It didn't last year either. This is
Well,
closer to the Camaro than it is to something like the 86 or the Porsches.
Sure.
You're a little bit of a bunker. You're kind of a letterboxed world in here. If that bothers you, this is one of those things where you need to get used to these blind spots because they are here. This car is bunkering you down.
It's interesting. As far as the ergonomics go, I just accept something like that as inherent in the design that I love. But the ergonomics are brilliant.
They are very good.
There is a lot of space. Yes. And just because the C-pillars are a little bit thicker, and I don't care.
Yeah. And I will say, in spite of the fact these are manual seats, they still have electronic bolsters.
Yeah.
And lumbar support.
Yeah.
So that actually is, these are great seats. We've driven them significant distance in the 2-liter, and we're very impressed.
You can't go wrong with either car. The good news is Toyota's making Supras. They're going to make more variations.
And they're good.
We hope a manual. Come on.
Yes.
Toyota, come on.
Yes. Can I get a parts bin list?
If you got any of this, Super GTS? Super GTS?